Hey guys, tonight we will slip quietly into a different morning, the kind that smells of wood smoke and wet grass, where a thin stripe of dawn squeezes through a crooked shutter and geese mutter on the village green. You wake on a straw mattress, a thatched roof above you like a sleeping animal, and somewhere far off a bell-shaped hum convinces you the day already began without you. It's cozy and beautiful, yes, but real talk, you probably won't survive this without blisters, bewilderment, and at least one questionable breakfast. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're listening from and what your local time is. I love seeing our sleepy map light up across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You come fully awake beneath the thatched eaves. The roof holds a whisper of rain in its reeds. Dark beams cross above pale daub fissured like tiny rivers. In the hearth, an ember sleeps under ash. Orange is a secret. A pot remembers barley and leek. The room is a quiet inventory. Stool, table, chest, rushes sweetened with lavender, shutters admitting a ribbon of silver air. You listen and learn the house by sound. A hen muttering in her wicker coop, the faint tick of cooling iron by the fire, the soft sigh of the thatch. You open the chest, find a linen shirt that smells of sun, and pull it on. It scratches kindly. A simple belt finds your waist. On the table, a clay mug offers small beer. Malty, thin, safer than water before the day proves itself. The latch is a loop of iron. You lift it, and the door concedes. Under the eaves, dew beads along the thatch tips, like a necklace of tiny lanterns. The air is oak smoke, damp wool, crushed nettle. It arrives without pretense and names the hour better than any clock. Somewhere near a cow shifts, somewhere far a river questions a stone. You step into the lane. Cottages lean in companionable conspiracy, their walls bowed by use. By one door, a bundle of reeds waits to become tomorrow's clean floor. By another, wooden clogs warm in a sun not yet risen. A piebald cad blinks, measuring your worth, then decides you are harmless. The fog loafs ankle high. A rook clears its throat like a town official and launches into slow authority. You walk as if not to wake a sleeping book. Heel, toe, pause. The breeze combs the thatch. A shutter pin turns. Light climbs a wall rung by rung. There are no schedules here, just signs. Smoke thickening, birds revising their opinions, footsteps gathering into conversation. You feel your thoughts round off their edges, content to roll instead of sprint. At a widening of the lane, a green opens, tufted by moles, signed by geese. The pond keeps a smudged copy of the sky and wrinkles when a water boatman rows his impossible boat. Somewhere unseen, flour meets heat in promise, and the idea of a crust lifts the corners of your mouth. You rest a hand on a lichen-furred rail and watch a path ribbon toward the elms. The lane suggests confidence, and you oblige. Dew climbs your cuffs like shy handwriting. A cart pauses with a wheel propped on a stone. Its iron rim catches a thread of sunlight. A broom leans at a threshold, bristles splayed from honest labor, handle polished by repetition. Behind a door, laughter fails to hide, and makes you feel included anyway. A low gate complains and creaks when the wind checks it. The morning's blue deepens. From somewhere a slow barn note rolls, not a summons, simply an announcement that the day exists. You nod back because it feels polite. Ahead, the lane softens into the village heart, a crossroads of earth where paths will braid and unbraid. You keep to the pale seam of dawn and let it lead. You pause one last time under the hush of the eaves and take stock the way a traveler does before a first step. 10 breaths, 2 hands, 1 good intention. Morning smells like permission. Your palm finds the doorpost, grain raised, faithful. A dog yawns somewhere and decides against commentary. The geese negotiate their agenda, with dew stippling your ankles and quiet making room inside your chest. You set off toward the square the light is slowly inventing for you. The village square takes a slow breath as you reach it, and you take one with it, because that's how mornings set the terms here. Smoke unspools from a dozen little chimneys and braids itself into the pale vanilla sky. Geese stage a loud meeting by the pond and lose the vote anyway. You follow the smell that every storybook pretends is constant: warm crust, toasted grain, a freckle of smoke, and discover the truth. The bakery is a heartbeat with a door. The baker's place is half oven, half gossip. Its low lintel kisses your hair as you duck in, and the world presses warm palms to your cheeks. The oven mouth is a little sun in brick, its lip soot gilded, its interior shimmering with heat so gentle it almost purrs. On a bench, rounds of dough swell like patient moons under linen. The baker, a woman with forearms that speak fluent need, glances up once and decides you are not a problem to solve, but a curiosity to feed. "You've dew on your cuffs," she says, then grins. "Hurry, before it turns to steam." She palms you a heel from the first batch, a maslin loaf, she explains, wheat and rye together, because plain wheat is for feasts in the Lord's table. The crust crackles like a tiny winter under your thumb. Steam slips out, honeyed and grassy, carrying the field right into your mouth. You burn your fingers a little and pretend dignity, but she sees and pretends not to. "We'll fix your hands later," she says. "Honey on cloth. Or better, use the good sense to tear smaller pieces." You lean on a flour-dusted trestle and listen to the room talk. A peel slides in, a peel slides out. A boy in a soft cap counts loaves aloud, tapping each with a fingernail to judge its song. In the corner, yesterday's trenchers, stale rounds destined to become plates, wait for pottage and the company of elbows. A cat does that liquid cat thing from stool to sill and blinks as if you owe it rent. "Bells will run you today," the baker says, as if you admitted you're new to gravity. She cuts a second heel and wraps it in cloth for you. Time's not numbers here, it's sound and shadow. She points her chin toward the door where sunlight kneels on the threshold. "First bell was prime, just before you put your head under my roof. Next is terce, work in earnest. Then sext, nooning and a sit-down with cheese if you've behaved. None after. Then vespers, home to your hearth before the pot sulks. Curfew bell last, and you keep your firebank safe or sleep cold." You nod like you were raised by bells and not by calendars. Your own world's notion of time, inches of minutes, skyscrapers of hours, feels slightly ridiculous beside this honest choreography of sound. "You'll want a cloak," she continues, eyeing your sun-bleached shirt, the hem already drinking the day's mud, "and a coin, even if you only spend it on kindness." She disappears behind a sack of flour and returns with a garment the color of pond reeds in shade. It smells faintly of smoke and rosemary, left by a cousin who married up the road and forgot down here. She ties it at your throat with brisk affection, like she's fastening you to the village so the wind can't steal you. As for the coin, she opens a small drawer and nudges a copper into your palm. It sits there with the comfortable gravity of an old friend. Not heavy, not light, just enough to say you belong to an exchange bigger than yourself. For Bellringer's box, she says, he keeps the hours from falling apart. You step back outside with your cloak's hood grazing your cheekbones and realize the square has gained definition, as if the baker's oven warmed the edges of the morning itself. Children chase a hoop. A woman lifts a bucket from the well and gives half to a dog who swears eternal loyalty and then immediately forgets. A man cranks a cart's axle tight and hums a tune that might be a prayer or just the tune carts prefer. And there, like a finger pointing into blue, the church tower. It is not grand, and that is its grandeur. A squat stone stem with bells for fruit. The door yawns oakishly. You climb the steps narrow as choices and find the ringer, a man built like a rope's idea of a man, lean, knotted, companionable. He wipes lime dust from his hands onto his tunic, grins, and nods at your copper as if it has introduced you both. We'll put it straight, he says, dropping it into a carved box shaped like a ship that never leaves harbor. He shows you the ropes, literally. Each one muffled in leather where it could burn a palm, each one named in the local mouth, Mary for the sweet-toned, Holy Cross for the solemn, and St. Michael for the practical courage to get through flax pulling and thatching. He says, we count by pull and echo, not the same as your, what do you call it, clock? Ours is wind measured, cloud agreed. He demonstrates a gentle draw. The bell answers with a bronze yawn that loosens something you didn't know was tight inside your chest. You try, of course, because you persist in being game for things you're not built for, and the rope lifts you a scandalous inch before the ringer steadies you with a palm that says, you'll live to make other small mistakes. Terse soon, he says, peering at the light along the tower slit. You'll hear it, and the day will change lanes. Bakers finish baking, smiths find their sparks. The reeve starts counting soles and sheaves. You'll be wanted in all of it, somehow. Wanted. Such a consoling medieval word. Not because you can fix anything, yet, but because a place always wants another witness, another pair of hands to pass a loaf, to set a shoulder to a wheel, to smile at a bell that keeps the world stitched together. When terse arrives, it's not abrupt. The ringer's hands lift, the rope bows, and sound rolls across thatch and field the way tide folds itself across a beach, sure of its work, uninterested in applause. The square answers with motion. Stalls open like eyelids. Shutters give up their opinions. A woman hangs out dyed wool like small wind-tamed flags. You thank the ringer, and because you were told to, you touch the ship box with your copper's echo still warm in it, and feel for a breath, like a citizen of something. Back on the green, the baker catches your eye from her door, makes a little gesture that translates universally to eat before you faint, and you obey, tucking the second heel into your cloak like a secret you fully intend to share. The bell fades to memory's bronze. The day strides forward, and you find your boots, muddy already, pointing toward the lane that smells like pepper, vinegar, and the tidal bravery of a market about to begin. Market Lane wakes like a river, slow at first, then talkative, and you are already part of its current. Your new cloak brushed by hanging cloth, your boots confessing every puddle. A gutter runs down the middle like an inked line, stepping stones hop it at hopeful intervals, and the timbered houses lean so close overhead that the sky looks stitched between their gables. Stalls bud from carts, awnings bloom, and the air swings between vinegar, yeast, damp wool, and the bright metallic whisper of coins changing pockets. You let the flow carry you past baskets of onions and apples, past trussed herbs, past a man who sells nothing but buttons and stories, until the lane opens into the day's small carnival. Bolts of undyed wool, thick as winter clouds, share a trestle with lengths of madder red and woad blue that look like someone bottled sunrise and evening. The draper plucks a bone rule from behind his ear and flicks it out to measure an L along the cloth's edge, his thumb sure, his speech elastic. "We sell by the L and the oath," he tells you, winking at your attempt to admire a sleeve pattern while not stepping into the gutter. "The oath works because the guild cares." He taps a little lead seal crimped to the bolt's hem, the town's badge and his own touch together like a handshake you can't counterfeit. He lets you stroke a coarse swatch, then a finer one that sighs like a cat when your hand goes with the grain. You think of your borrowed cloak, its rosemary smoke, and imagine its cousins stacked here like sleeping houses. "If your purse is shy," the draper adds, "barter breathes just as well as coin. A morning pulling ropes, a back under a pack. I take use in payment so long as it's clean. But mind, never haggle with both hands greedy. Keep one hand for courtesy." He shows you, one palm open, one palm counting, and a nod that lets the price land softly. You practice the nod and buy a length of thread the color of pond water, more because you want to belong to the ritual than because you need it. Beyond him, the salt cellar keeps a little fortress. White cones stand like miniature mountains, edges flaking as if they remember the sea. His scales are brass petals that open and close with suspicion. He raps a weight with his knuckle. The note rings fair. "No salt, no supper," he declares to the passing world. "No salt, no winter, no cheese, no reason." He permits a pinch, and the bright grains disappear on your tongue with a seaside hiss. Your copper warms in your palm, and you trade it for a paper twist of salt, as if you bought a pocket of weather. Then the eel woman claims your attention without asking permission. She rules a pair of barrels banded like stout belts, river water slapping the staves. A rope winks with silver commas, eels debating punctuation. She reaches down, hooks one out with a movement neat as an ink stroke, and it writes a sentence in the air before becoming grammar in her hands. Alive means fresh. Fresh means kinder to your belly. You're invited to touch, cool muscle, clean river, a little thunder under skin. She shows you how to carry an eel like a ribbon of lightning and laughs when it tries to argue its way home. A boy in a soft cap, perhaps the baker's counter of loaves from an earlier hour, materializes at your elbow with a grin that could sell sunshine. "If you stand under windows, stand ready," he warns, and tips his cap toward the timbered overhangs. You hear a shutter unlatch, a voice toss a warning, and a slosh follows, not catastrophic but persuasive. The gutter accepts the donation and runs merrier. You practice the local dance, one step back, one step aside, and the boy approves. Sometimes they shout first, and sometimes the sky just happens. He teaches you to walk center when the wind is still, edge when it's not, and to trust the lane's language. If everyone is looking up, you should too. You learn to read the street the way you learn the tower's ropes, by touch and sound and the angle of light. Shop signs speak in pictures because letters are a luxury. A boot for the cobbler, a comb for the barber surgeon, a gilded pestle for the apothecary whose doorway sighs of mint and vinegar. At a traveling smith's stall you notice touch marks on nails and buckles, small stars, crescents, and initials that stand for hands. If it breaks, find the mark, and the man mends it, or the guild mends him. He says this cheerfully, but his hammer looks persuasive. Barter becomes a small theater, and you a quiet understudy. A woman offers onions plaited into a braid neat as a prayer. The potter weighs them against a stack of beakers his wife painted with skeptical hairs. "Make the braid even," the potter advises, "and I'll throw in a saucer the color of winter sunlight." He doesn't mean the season is sad. He means glazed straw yellow, the shade of saved hay and cheerful walls. You admire the saucer until he shrugs and tucks a chipped one into your hand for luck, the chip already smoothed by touching thumbs. A cooper rolls a new cask as hoops singing dull iron. A tinker rattles by with a bundle of soldering tales. A child sells rushlights, and when you buy one for the price of a compliment and your bravest attempt at the local word for thank you, she tucks two into your hand and says, "We always give one to the dark." The generosity sits quietly in your palm, warm as the baker's heel from earlier, and you begin to understand how the day is stitched. Small stitches, strong thread. By late morning, the heat nudges odors into arguments. Garlic boasting, fish insisting, cloth replying with the decency of lanolin. And you learn another trick. Stallholders add a tiny kindness to honest trades. The eel woman slips you extra time. The salt cellar taps a few more crystals into your twist, pretending not to notice. The draper knots the end of your string-bound bundle so it will not betray you on the walk home. None of it is charity. It is the grammar of belonging. You make one last careful look upward, no fresh weather from windows, and step aside to let a cart wheel through, admiring how the iron whim writes its circular signature in the mud. The bells will pull the day into a new shape soon, toward heat and hammer, ink and prayer, bread and the long fields. For a moment, though, the market holds you like a good pocket holds a coin. Easy, useful, welcome. And you can hear it sing a little whenever you move. The lane kinks toward a sound you already knew before you were born, hammer to anvil, a bright, ringing heartbeat that tells the day what shape to keep. You follow it past a stack of wagon hubs and a yawn of timber until the forge gathers you under its low, smoke-eyed eaves. Heat breathes from the doorway as if the building keeps a small dragon and has learned to live amicably with it. Inside, light is a living thing, orange where the coals bank, white where the iron blooms, gold where motes of ash turn to patient planets in their slow orbits. The smith looks up and measures you the way good tools measure wood, not to judge, but to understand what will fit. He has the solid quiet that heavy work gives to a person, not loudness, not swagger, just the kind of stillness that keeps a whole village threaded. "Bell brought you?" he asks, and when you nod, he points you toward the bellows, two leather lungs with wooden ribs, a mouth like a secret cave. "Let it breathe like a sleeping ox," he says. "Long draws, no fuss." You set your hands to the handles and discover a rhythm that matches the day's earlier bells. Lift, press, listen. Lift, press, listen. Coals answer by brightening from ember to cherry to the first astonished orange. An apprentice, elbowy, smudged with black snow from flaking scale, names the tools to you with the pride of knowing their syllables: tongs, wolf mouth, and duckbill, fuller and drift, hardy and pritchel, swage block with its little country of hollows. He gives you the light hammer, no insult, just sense, and shows you where to stand so your swing falls honest and doesn't kiss his master's knuckles. He says this like a joke, but you can tell it's a lesson from earlier in his life because his laughter carries a healed memory. The smith draws a bar from the coals with a hiss and a red breath, lays it to the anvil, and the shop turns into music. He doesn't pound, he plays. You watch the iron move as if it were dough under the baker's hands this morning. Stretch here, fold there, turn, return, let the heat do part of the work. A horseshoe blooms out of a straight thing until you can't remember how it was otherwise. He bumps the curve against the horn, pricks nail holes with the pritchel, and between heats he listens, actually listens to the sound the metal makes. Too bright a ring means too thin, he murmurs. A dull sulk means cold. Keep it singing. A farrier's customer arrives, a mare with kind eyes and a patience learned from cart work. The smell of warm hide and hay walks in with her. The smith lifts her foot with a word that sounds like a friend's nickname and checks the frog, the wall, the clean crescent where last shoe met hoof. He makes adjustments quickly and without drama. Rasp, fit, reheat, fit again. When the hot shoe kisses the hoof to mark where trimming will make it true, there is the brief, sweet, bitter smoke that every stable knows. The mare flicks an ear, unbothered, and the apprentice hums the bell cadence you heard at terce. You step aside, hand on a post polished by 100 such mornings, and let the practiced kindness of skill work the small miracle of walking without pain. When the mare clops out lighter than she came in, the wheelwright hurries through the door with a hinge plate drilled with rust and a face like a storm that hasn't decided whether to break. Gate won't hold the north wind, he says. The smith tips the ruined plate on the anvil, tests it with his thumbnail, and nods toward you. Keep the fire breathing. You pump the bellows, careful and steady, and the iron quickens. In the space of a dozen long breaths, he cuts fresh plate from bar, rounds its corners, punches holes over the hardy with crisp, ringing taps. The wheelwright's storm thins. Gratitude makes fair weather of his brow. Market, he asks, because the guild and the village both keep a ledger of trust in metal. The smith uses a small stamp, a star you've seen scratched into buckles at the market, and strikes his touch mark into the plate's corner. The star sits there calm as a signature. If it fails, the mark finds me, he says, not as worry, but as promise. You wonder what it must be like to live by the proof of your hands like that, a line of stars around town, whispering your name every time a hinge swings or a shoe bites the road. Nails are next, because nails are always next. They're the commas of the village, and today the sentence needs many. He draws out the rod to a square taper, neat as the draper's measuring bone, then nips a length over the hardy. The apprentice catches it in a header, a little iron board with holes, and the smith roses ahead in 3 musical taps. Stroke, turn, stroke, a rhythm so tidy it could be a lullaby. Each nail goes into a bucket with a cheerful clink, a handful of stars for a door, a stool, a cart, a life stain joined to itself. When you ask, because curiosity is a currency here as good as copper, he puts one aside and rolls it against the anvil, checking its straightness under a practiced eye. This one, he says. He quenches it in a side tub. The hiss is a small cloud of applause. Then, before handing it over, he squeezes a scratch of wax along the head and rubs it with his thumb until it gleams like a little midnight with a moon on top. Explains that old sense says a pocketed nail steals blisters before they form and bites luck before it bites you. Iron remembers pathways. Let it remember yours kindly. He presses the cool length into your palm, and it sits there with the same honest weight as the bell ringer's rope, as the baker's heel, useful, friendly, sure. You tuck the lucky nail into your cloak's inside seam next to the twist of salt and the draper's pond-colored thread. The apprentice sees and nods approval as if you passed a local exam. Keep it there, he says. If you cross a new threshold, tap the lintel with it. If you start a fire in a place you don't know yet, lay the nail by the hearth till the first boil. Before you leave, the smith grins and sets your hands to the light hammer so you can make one nail of your own. He holds the rod, you try to persuade the taper into being, and it comes. Ugly, but willing. Your head is a lopsided daisy. Your pride is absurdly awake. No one laughs. The bucket receives your effort without prejudice, and the shop's music folds your clumsy note into its song until it sounds almost like belonging. By the doorway, you pause and turn back. The forge is still working, the bellows still breathing, the world still being held together one small star at a time. You smell of smoke, iron, and the rosemary that lives in the hem of your borrowed cloak. Outside, the light has changed lanes again, toward Sext and Cheese and the long fields. You touch the nail through the fabric, feel its quiet there like a handclasp, and step into a noon that suddenly looks like it was waiting for you to help carry it. The lane releases you into the fields the way a porch releases you into weather. No door, just a decision and a widening. The ground opens as a quilt of long, narrow strips stitched by hedgeless seams, each one a different sentence in the same green story. At the path head waits the reeve, hat like folded sparrow, ledger corded to his belt as if numbers need a leash. He carries the kind of authority that doesn't need to clear its throat. "Walk with me," he says, as if you have already agreed. And you do, because his voice fits the morning like a glove. He names the strips the way a shepherd names ewes. That's Widow Elswith's winter wheat. And there, see that paler run? Last year's barley speaking under this year's peas. His hazel stick taps the soil. The ground returns a hollow, friendly note. 3 field keeps us honest, he adds. 1 in wheat, 1 in spring grain, 1 left fallow to breathe. The saints keep the calendar, but the soil keeps the turns. You nod like you grew up with it, and maybe some quiet part of you did, because the pattern sits in your chest with the calm and something obvious and right. Oxen come shouldering along the headland with a yoke like a wooden smile. Their breath arrives in braids, warm as bakery doors. Their patience could shame kings. A boy not much taller than the plow handles whistles a scale that matches the furrow's punctuation. Turn, lift, settle. Turn, lift, settle. While the iron share folds the earth with that old, relieved sigh every harvest story begins with. Behind the team, the ridge and furrow wake like corduroy in sunlight. Horse pull quicker, the reeve admits, but oxen pay for themselves in milk and meat, and they don't argue with noon. Between the strips runs the bulk, a grass seam where children practice balance and adults exchange news with their boots still in separate parishes. The reeve shows you the gleaning corners, where stubble will later spend itself on charity, and the commons where geese patrol like armored opinions. He points to the rabbit warrens on the Lord's Rise, ferret work for some lucky boy, and to the coppice where hazel grows in obedient spirals, promising stakes, hoops, and handles, the way a good sentence promises its own ending. We borrow from tomorrow and pay it back in wood, he says, and the hazel nods as if it understands compound interest. You pass a scarecrow whose oat straw hat is cheekier than yours. A magpie lands on his arm, unfooled but polite. At a ditch, the reeve plucks watercress and teaches you to rinse grit without losing leaves. It tastes like a clean opinion. We keep saints' days because bodies need holidays as much as souls, he remarks, spitting a stem with an archer's certainty. Plough Monday puts us back on the furrows, rogation walks bless the boundaries. St. Swithin grumbles about rain. St. Martin reminds us to sharpen the knives for winter. No man can hoe forever, not even you, traveler. Every few steps he consults his tally and his eye, the two rarely disagreeing for long. He counts by notches on a slim hazel rod, swapping to a new one when the old has told its full story. Steward reads the books, I read the fields. He shrugs. Come Manor Court, we braid both readings and hope the rope holds. He says manor court the way other people say market day, a mix of inevitability and mild entertainment. You picture the timbered hall you glimpsed from the road and file it for later, the way you'd tuck a crust into your pocket against an afternoon. At Sext, the bells pour across the fields in a bronze ribbon, and the landscape answers by sitting down. Oxen stop as if the sound braided itself into the yoke. Tools lean against thighs. Someone laughs with their whole inhale. Bread and cheese appear the way daisies appear, suddenly, and as if they had been waiting just under the skin of the world. You set out the baker's heel, now companionably cool, and the twist of salt that turns your palm into a tiny shore. The eel woman's time, forgotten in your cloak, announces itself like a small, green fanfare. You taste noon the way one tastes a story near its turning point. The bread remembers the oven, the cheese remembers the cow's mourning, the salt remembers the sea, and your lucky nail, stitched inside your seam, remembers the anvil and somehow persuades your blisters that they have better appointments elsewhere. Aye, when he catches you flexing your hands with surprised comfort, he says, "Iron keeps counsel with skin, old hedge magic. Keep it there." You have an apple with a knife the color of old pewter, and the two of you bless the shade with small, reverent bites, like a ceremony without paperwork. Talk slides into the soft topics that hold a village steady. Who's courting whom? No names, only dimples. Which sow is a genius? Whether the miller's new cap means he's paid off a debt or taken a larger one. A pipe appears from a boot and coaxes out a tune with more evening in it than the sky currently allows. A girl threads daisies into a chain and, with the benevolent tyranny of artists, crowns the reeve without asking. He accepts the coronation gravely, bows to his constituency of geese, and the geese file a loud counterproposal that ends in grass. Feast, you ask, mouth still shaped like cheese. Soon enough, he says, we roast because labor needs punctuation. Lammas brings the first loaf. Michaelmas tastes of honeyed fritters. There's cider sharp enough to argue and then forgive. But a feast can eat a week's work if you turn your back. He smiles a practical smile. Measure merriment like grain, heap it, but level it off. A wind sidles in smelling of crushed thyme and turned loam. Clouds gather into a thoughtful shade. The bronze ribbon thins to silence. People rise as if an invisible hand has lifted the page and said, "Now then." The reeve knots his cheese back into its cloth, tucks it into the ledger satchel, and taps your draper's thread, still pond-colored, still yours. You'll sew yourself into us yet, he says, which sounds like both prophecy and compliment, so you accept it as both. Before you part, he walks you to the river's bow of bank where willow pollards show their knuckled fists. He cuts a switch, peels the bark in one long, satisfying ribbon, and hands it over. For binding rush lights, he remembers, the two the child pressed on you, and for tying memory to utility. See that you do both. He slips the peeled stick through your belt without ceremony, which is exactly the right amount of ceremony. Work resumes lightly, as if the land dislikes sulking. A last crumb, a last joke, a last glance at a cloud that resembles some local dog, and the plow handles find their hands again. You walk the balk beside the reeve, your boots in two parishes once more, feeling how the village breathes together. Hold, release, continue. Near the hedgeless horizon he points with the hazel. There, by the willow fence, the midwife keeps her simples. If the day scuffs you or the water misbehaves, she'll set you straight. You thank him, pat the lucky nail through your seam, and follow the narrow path the bees have already drawn towards a garden where leaves shine like small instructions waiting to be read. The midwife's gate is willow-laced and practical, a quiet green hinge between field and remedy. You slip through and the smell changes from plow and bread to crushed mint, sun-warmed beeswax, and that peppery tickle only time can manage. Beds lie in crisp rectangles, their edges ruled with wicker hurdles. Labels are more memory than ink. Bundles tied to stakes, little notches the reeve would admire. The midwife herself is the sort of woman who speaks like a kettle just before the first bubble. Low, steady, inevitable. Hands clean, she says, nodding at a basin. You wash, and the water remembers the river, while the soap, tallow, kissed with lavender, remembers last summer. She walks you through her living cupboard. Garlic hangs in braids like pale bells, its papery skins whispering against one another. A clove crushed, a spoon of honey, she says, setting mortar to pestle with the confidence of someone who can argue a fever down. Spread thin on clean cloth, bind over bites and small scrapes. Honey keeps trouble out. Garlic invites courage in. You think of your bakery burnt fingertips, pretend you didn't, and she pretends she didn't notice the flinch. We'll mend those after, she adds, pleased at being right in advance. Nettles flank a fence, beautiful and rude. She shows you the trick the field children know. Fold the leaf over itself, stroke with the grain, then pinch. The sting forgets you. Dry them for winter, she instructs, or bruise fresh and steep. Nettle tea for blood that feels thin, for mornings that arrive heavier than they should. She sets a handful aside, green dark as pond shadow, and nods at the kettle. You bank a small fire the way the smith asked you to breathe the bellows, no fuss, just rhythm, and set water to climb toward eagerness. Plantain lives low and humble at the path edge, a little hand always open. For stings, she says, and for walking farther than sense would recommend. She spits lightly, presses leaf to spit the way grandmothers have for as long as stones remember feet, and shows the neat magic of swelling receding under green. Yarrow stands like confetti along the fence. She praises its tidy insistence without inviting you to bleed to prove it. Comfrey, knitbone, grows in a dignified corner, and here she is strict. Leaves for poultice, but not on breaks you'll never look at again without sighing. Bones want a physician and time, not only wishful leaves. Her eyes dare you to promise, and you do, because you like your future. The still room is a cool, stone-shouldered annex, smelling of rain and rosemary. Its light is an even gray that flatters jars into saints. On shelves, brown glass and pottery hold summers in suspension. Syrups, vinegars, oils that remember afternoons. A small copper alembic dozes in a corner like a friendly beetle. She pats it the way other people pat dogs. When the garden wants to travel, we coax it into water and spirit. She pours nettle leaves into an earthenware pot and adds the water that has just learned to sing. Steep, while you could say the Lord's Prayer thrice generous, then once more for the obstinate. Bells measure it just as well. You listen for time as taste. For your baker's bravado, she says, and smears a whisper of garlic honey onto a square of clean linen, and winds it round your fingers with the tenderness of someone binding a gift. Heat surrenders to cool, sting turns to story you can later embellish. Next time tear smaller, she reminds, echoing the baker, and there's a conspiracy of women between them that keeps you outnumbered and safely advised. From a drawer she removes a skein of red thread, the good sort, dyed honest with matter. For the small ires the eye can't see, she says, and for journeys that jump out unexpected. She ties it around your wrist in 3 quiet knots, one for body, one for breath, one for the road. If you must untie it, speak grateful words to each knot as it loosens.
You think of the pond-colored thread from the draper and the lucky nail stitched into your seam, and you understand that some protections clink and others only glow. When water isn't clean, she leans on the table and looks at you over the nettles, as if this is a lesson you must pass to earn your night's sleep. Choose what moves. Running water gossips less than pools. Draw upstream of beasts and busy hands. Let the first jug rinse the path, not your mouth. If you cannot trust the river, you make it admit everything it knows. Settle it in a jar till the silt remembers gravity. Pour the clear top through tight-woven linen, your pond thread will do, and give it the kindness of a boil. She smiles at your face when you think of counting minutes. This is a place of bells. Keep it at a friendly simmer to the length of 5 Hail Marys, or till the kettle frets without spitting. If you've vinegar, give a slosh the size of a generous walnut. If you've ale, the light kind, 1 part to 3. Time wants to help. Remember the eel woman's sprig? So toss some in. Let it sit till a song ends, and drink warm. Not for babes, she adds, but better for bellies than a stranger's bucket. She taps a charcoal loaf near the hearth. If you must travel tomorrow, lay a small piece in the jug overnight. Char remembers fire and persuades water to mind itself. The kettle sighs readiness. She strains the nettle into 2 mugs, the color of browned moss after rain. It tastes like iron courage and clean hedges. You'll sleep kinder for this, she predicts, which sounds like a blessing dressed as a certainty. She cakes up your rushlights, the 2 the child pressed upon you at market, and shows how to bind their bases with the willow stripping the reeve threaded through your belt. 1 for the dark, 1 for decisions, she says. Burn the first low when curfew bell speaks. Bank your hearth like the baker covers her dough. Keep a coal the size of a small plum under ash. She lays your lucky nail by the fire bricks with ceremony light as breath. Let iron learn this hearth. When you travel onward, it will introduce you to the next without awkwardness. Advice ripens into stories the way pears ripen into scent. She tells you how St. John's wort weaves sunlight into the sads, how fennel seeds tempt stubborn appetites, how mint and lemon balm persuade anxious lems to sit down. When you ask what pays her for knowing, she gestures to the shelves. A spare loaf on Fridays, a ribbon when dye runs well, a copper when births end in singing. Mostly it's this, she says, and pats your bandaged hand. A day walking on easier feet. You help her shell dried rose hips for winter syrup, their brittle skins popping like patient applause. The room collects a small choir of pleasant sounds. Mortar murmurs, kettle hum, linen whispers across wood, the outside bees make decisions in the lavender. When you rise to leave, the midwife tucks a twist of dried thyme into your cloak beside the eel woman's fresh and presses a little pot of honey into your palm. For burns, for bad moods, for bribes. At the door, she touches the red thread on your wrist, checks its knots with a nod, and sends you along the path with nettle warmth in your chest, garlic sweetness on your fingers, and the steadiness that comes from knowing what to do when water forgets how to be kind.
The path lifts toward stone the way a hymn lifts toward its last note, and you find yourself walking in the shadow of an abbey wall that seems to remember every winter and forgive them all anyway. The air cools as if the building has its own weather, a kind of gray benevolence that settles the mind, even if the body is still negotiating with its blisters. You touch the lucky nail through your cloak, and it answers with a small, sensible calm. The red thread on your wrist feels suddenly at home, a quiet color in a world of old limestone. A lay brother greets you with the smile of someone who has decided years ago that curious travelers are simply a species of bird. He ushers you through a door feathered with iron studs and into a cloister where footsteps learn humility. The square of grass in the center glows like a kept promise. A well, lidded and dignified, holds the sky as if it were a responsibility. None soon, the brother whispers, because time here still belongs to bells. Prime, terse, the sext you ate your cheese to, none nudging work toward evening, then vespers, and Compline like a night watch's lullaby. He steers you into the scriptorium, a long room of even light where windows wear thin slices of horn and the air smells gently of scraped skin and gum. This is not sinister, it is parchment, sheep, calf, goat, turned into pages with the patience of seasons. Tables sit with their backs to the light, slanted like respectful ears. Quills rest in shallow trays like sleeping birds. A monk trims one with a penknife, coaxing a nib as neat as a resolution. When he tests it, the scratch sounds like frost learning to write on a window. "Sit," says a voice soft as pumice. The master of this room slides you a board with a square of parchment already pricked and ruled, tiny pinholes along the margins, faint lead lines drawn with a metal point that leaves a whisper of silver. Rule before you ruin, which is also good life advice, and gives you a modest quill. It looks harmless. You suspect it could make you confess every clumsy habit you have. Before ink, pigment. A novice brings a small mortar, an oyster shell, and something the color of night ponds. Oak gall crushed and married to iron, thickened with gum. In another shell, verdigris winks like tarnished pears. In a third, red brighter than your thread, minium or a tempered madder. You are set to the smallest work first, grinding a crumb of blue. Not lapis, save your fantasies, but a blue that asks for kindness. You circle the pestle in the mortar until powder turns to the softest weather. Add tears, the novice says, then grins at your face. Not yours. A drop of water and a little gum. He pours, you stir, and the paste goes from stubborn to obedient. The calendar of feasts waits on a page a monk turns toward you, columns ruled like garden beds. We plant days, he explains, tapping with a finger the color of walnut shells. Sundays with their proper antiphons, the long fast like a thoughtful cloud. Feasts with gold dots where joy needs reminding. He shows you the small moons, golden numbers, creeping down the margin to tell where Easter will insist on happening this year and the next. We reckon by sun and moon both, because grace is greedy that way. You like that sentence so much you want to copy it onto your own hand, but you behave. Another monk lays a psalter open, its letters a disciplined forest, trunks vertical and close, leaves carefully thorned. Between them, vines and small beasts play where the scribe allowed his lunch to become art. Gold leaf glints in the margin, held down by gesso and faith. He taps the page gently. Light is a visitor we ask to stay. We give it a bed of gesso. We set bread and salt before it, and then we breathe politely while it sits.
You believe him because the room itself is a lesson in invited light. The windows filtering the day into milk, the candles steady in iron spikes like slow constellations. The novice's quiet breath as he learns the habit of not hurrying. Your hand, says the master, sliding you a scrap, copy a line. And he points to a sentence meaningless without its music, but beautiful anyway. The ink tastes of iron on the air. The quill furthers the shy scratch. You angle the nib. Remember the draper's lesson about one hand for courtesy, and let the letters rise like small fences, each keeping its field. Your first attempt leans as if drink had been charitably offered. Your second stands better. Your third almost sings. Enough pride to care, enough humility to continue, the master says, and you nod as if that weren't the hardest balance you know. Candles begin to matter as none leans toward evening. Their beeswax scent is a faint hymn of summer fields. The flames hold steady, little suns that have figured out the room's drafts. You copy a short line by that patient light, amazed at how quickly the world shrinks to the width of a margin and then somehow expands to fill you. Outside, the cloister hush gathers blue. Inside, a novice lifts his face, and you can hear him running the calendar silently. If today is this, then tomorrow we read that, and next week we taste Rudimus or Candlemas or some other gateway that lets ordinary life walk into ceremony and back again without knocking. When your hand craves mercy, the master takes your quill and shows you the kindness of a safe rest, how to lay it across the shell's lip so nibs don't drown, how to close the ink with a skein of oiled cloth, how to pounce the page with powdered pumice to give the letters tooth. He dabs your baker-burned fingertips with a smear of the midwife's recipe. He recognizes garlic and honey and raises one eyebrow, impressed by your friends. Good medicine, he approves. Also good bread. You tell him quietly about the bell ringer's ship box, the smith's star mark, the Reeves' peeled willow, the eel woman's thyme hidden like a green cousin in your cloak, and he listens the way monks listen, as if the village were a gospel with many chapters and none of them heretical. Bells begin far to near, a bronze river pouring through stone. The master gathers his papers like a man closing shutters against rain, not fearful, simply thorough. Vespers asks us to turn our faces toward the evening without squinting. And his smile says he knows you are still learning how to turn without stumbling. He tucks a tiny offcut of parchment into your palm with your copied line drawing upon it. Crooked, hopeful, yours. Keep it as proof that quiet is a craft, and bring your pond-colored thread next time. We'll show you how to stitch quires so a book remembers how to hold itself together. You walk back through the cloister, where the well keeps the sky, and the geese of your earlier day live only as a comical echo in your ears. Your rushlights wait in your pouch like tame comets. Evening puts a cool hand on your hair. In the court, a brother feeds a cat discreetly. Both act surprised. You passed once more under the iron-studded door and down the path toward the village. Parchment offcut tucked against the twist of salt and the red thread and the lucky nail. The lot of them clicking and whispering like old friends plotting how to get you safely to the next hour.
The road forgets its mud for a while and turns to beaten earth as you climb toward the manor. The hall rises, half timber, half memory, its black beams and white infill like a chessboard that has learned manners. Smoke drifts from the louvre in the roof and writes an easy sentence across the sky. At the door, a pair of hounds consult your ankles and your pockets, conclude you are a source of neither hare nor ham, and let you pass. Inside, the world is rafters, rush-strewn floor, tallow and beeswax candles making small suns, and banners whose colors dream a little in the dim. The steward sits beneath a painting of St. Michael, weighing a soul with more professionalism than terror. A tally stick laid across his knees, a purse of seals in reach. He wears the look of someone who has learned to make order without sounding like thunder. The reeve stands at his right, hat mercifully free of daisies today, and the beadle, pipe thin with a voice that could slice turnips, keeps a list and a straight face. You find a place along the wall, your cloak humming faint rosemary, your lucky nail a cool comma at your ribs, and you let the hall begin to speak. First come little quarrels, because little quarrels keep the big ones from getting ideas. A boundary furrow wandered in last spring's rain. 2 strips now overlap, like cousins at a feast. The steward listens as each farmer draws invisible lines in the air with their hands. He sends the reeve out with 4 men to walk the balk and swear by elm, ditch on the way the morning shadows fall, which furrow belongs where. They return with mud at their heels and unanimity in their eyes. The steward nods, cuts a notch on a slim hazel rod, and tucks it into a bundle thick as a broom, the hall's memory tied with string. A pig trespassed and feasted on a neighbor's peas. The pig is not present. Her reputation, unfortunately, is. The owner argues that fences should be statements, not suggestions. The neighbor suggests that pigs are philosophers who enjoy challenging premises. The ale taster, because of course there is one, and he smells faintly of responsibility and rye, testifies soberly that the fence in question is a joke told by inattentive sticks. The fine is a penny or an afternoon repairing rails, whichever weighs more kindly on the purse. The owner chooses the rails, which pleases everyone, including, you suspect, the pig. Then the assize of bread and ale is read. The steward recites prices and weights the way the bell ringer recites ropes, measured, uninterested in drama. The baker, your baker, stands easy, flour at her cuff and satisfaction under her tongue. The ale taster reports her loaves honest and her oven watchful. There is a nod from the steward and a murmured approval around the hall, because loaves that meet their promises are the difference between a village and a rumor. Obligations braid themselves through the afternoon. Rents in coin clink modestly into a wooden bowl, each copper a brief solemn nod to roofs and roads shared. Rents in kind arrive with smells, a sack of oats, a side of bacon, a coil of wool like a pale cloud. Labor service is named in days, so many boon days to reap the Lord's domain, so many to cart timber, so many to waste rocks out of fields that never run out of rocks. The steward reads each name, each person answers, the reeve marks the ledger with a satisfaction that looks like relief. Work is a net, he told you once on the bulk. It only catches enough when all corners are held. A tithe list comes next, because the abbey's bell and the parish's roof do not ring and mend themselves. 1 sheaf in 10 promised at harvest,
One lamb in 10 named with a small rueful smile. Honey, if the bees have been political. A boy tries to bargain the quality of his lamb down by demonstrating its talent for escape. The steward, amused, allows substitution of grain and an undertaking to help mend the churchyard wall. The boy looks as if he has outwitted heaven. Heaven likely enjoys the joke. Bigger words sit in the hall's mouth as well, and they do not taste as sweet. Merchant, the marriage fine trembles in the air when a father asks leave for his daughter to wed a man from the next manor over. The steward weighs loyalty against livelihood, makes a mark on a stick and a mark on a heart, and reduces the fee at the reeve's quiet reminder of last winter's lien. Harriet, death duty, takes the best beast from a newly widowed cottage, but the steward hears the midwife's voice from the doorway, honey and garlic on it, and grants a grace period so milk and spring together can find their footing. It is not mercy in a songbook sense, but it is the kind that keeps the village whole. You watch the view of Frankpledge pass like a comb through a flock. Tithing men answer for the behavior of their tens, vouching that no one has stolen, harbored, or brewed trouble stronger than ale. Oaths click into place. Fines, when they come, are small and human-scaled, a promise worn like a ring rather than a shackle. The beadle calls names, the steward answers with scratches on hazel, and the hall, which looked at first like a place of punishments, becomes the place where everyone agrees the world will go on. Between cases, trenchers of pottage circulate, barley, leeks, and a whisper of pork that walked past the pot and blessed it. Someone drops thyme into your bowl, eel woman, conspirator of flavor even here, and the steam writes new manners on your face. Bread makes laps like a friendly dog. Your bandaged fingers bless the midwife again. The steward eats standing, tally laid aside for a moment, and hears a petition to repair the footbridge as flood season mutters in the distance of the year. He grants timber, nails, your smith's stars winking in their bucket, and 3 workdays from each household after the feast of St. Lawrence. A proclamation. The fair will open at week's end, banners and booths permitted on the green, strangers welcomed and watched with the same affection. The hall approves with a noise that is mostly hunger dressed as enthusiasm. The steward names the bounds where stalls may stand, forbids dice in the shadow of the church, and appoints 2 men and 1 woman to keep the night watch during fairtide. The woman smiles like someone who has already seen everything dicey men think is new. As Vespers thinks about happening, the last case knocks, a small purse gone missing on the green. Not ours to solve, yet, because the day is closing its ledger, and the bells will have the last say. Bring me the boy who found it, not the man who lost it, he says mildly, and your ear pricks at the odd kindness of that angle. You think of the ship-box in the tower, the market's dance under the windows, the way the midwife tied knots for body, breath, and road. The web tightens, not to trap, but to hold. When the hall empties into evening, you shoulder the world's gentle tugs, the tithe in the church's direction, the fair's promise, the bridge waiting for nails, the purse missing its owner like a mouth missing a tooth. Outside, the air has thinned to blue. A hound leans into your leg and tells you without words that obligations are not chains when chosen together. You scratch its ear, feel the lucky nail through your seam, and follow the village downhill toward lamps and the sudden music that means a fair, is already rehearsing behind closed doors.
Fair day pulls the village inside out like a pocket. Coins, colors, secrets, all shaken into the light. Banners frill along the green's boundary, just where the steward declared, their cloth catching the breeze like gossip practicing its vowels. From the louver of the church roof, smoke from cooking fires threads the morning, as if it had tickets to everything. The bell gives a companionable note, and the square answers with bustle. Stalls multiply like kindly rabbits, and strangers arrive with faces that have learned roads you haven't walked yet. Jugglers claim a patch of sun and argue with gravity until gravity concedes it likes a little argument. Balls arc in quiet rainbows, knives shimmer, strictly theatrical. One juggler bows with a flourish that makes a child's gasp feel like a bell. Minstrels tune a viol to the weather. It comes out cheerful, and a bagpiper leans into a low drone that vibrates pleasantly in your ribs, the way the smith's anvil did. A puppet booth pops up with saints who look suspiciously like local sinners, and the night watch woman, the one the steward appointed, plants herself nearby with a staff and a smile that says she will enjoy this responsibly. You drift, which is the only way to move through a fair without bruising it. A spice seller passes you a pinch to smell, pepper that sneezes the world awake, cinnamon that tells elaborate lies about warm places, saffron bright enough to paint sunrise on porridge. A glass man holds up beads that have captured tiny pieces of sky. They wink at your pond-colored thread as if they're cousins. A tinker sings about kettles that behave and tin that won't sulk. His hammer keeps tenor to the bagpipe's drone. The ale taster, solemn as ever, makes his rounds, and you see your baker's loaf halved at more than one stall, her honest crumb working a slow rescue on hunger. You have a copper for nonsense thanks to the baker's shipbox habit. You spend it on honey cakes that make your bandaged fingertips feel vindicated for their bravery. The midwife's red thread flashes when you lift the cake for a mouthful. A child spots the color, touches their own wrist where a similar knot lives, and grins as if you recognized each other in a foreign city. "Lucky nail?" the eel woman asks, materializing like a tide. You tap your seam. She approves and slips a leaf of fresh thyme into the cake's sticky edge, for courage that tastes nice. The market's grammar holds, gifts a little larger than debts, laughter tidy, barter polite, until the sentence stumbles. It happens as gracefully as trouble can. A merchant from the next town up cries out, short and clean, hand to belt where a small purse has stopped being. He swears by his inventory, ribbons, needles, pretty brass thimbles, that the string was whole a minute ago. Heads turn. The night watch woman steps between accusation and air with her staff like a period. "Easy now," she says, her voice flat enough to iron a shirt. "Who found it last?" You catch the odd angle to the question, and remember the steward. Bring me the boy who found it, not the man who lost it. But the crowd is quicker than sense, crowds usually are, and you are, alas, a new face, with a cloak that looks borrowed, and a habit of asking good questions. Someone remembers seeing you near the ribbon stall. True, you admired a shade like river reed. Someone else remembers you counting coins with an outsider's carefulness. True, because your coins are few. And someone else would like a story before lunchtime. Whispers lift like starlings. "Traveler," says a man who smells of well-managed goats, trying kindly not to say stranger. The minstrels let their tunes slacken to make room for listening. Even the puppet saints peer over their plywood proscenium. You raise both hands the way the draper taught, one for courtesy, the other for counting, and you feel the calm of the bell ropes in your palms.
"I've a copper's honesty and a cake's worth of crumbs," you say, showing both with gentle sarcasm, "and a nail that will stick me if I lie." The joke lands softly enough to take the hump off a few shoulders. The night watch woman's eyes flick to your seam as if she truly expects the nail to testify. She hides a smile and says, "Then let's set our ears to the ground and our eyes to the edges." Your baker appears at your shoulder like a good smell making decisions. She notes to the air, which is who you have to address when crowds are gathered. The reeve adds his hat to the argument, which always helps. The bell ringer, who has muscles like a sentence that doesn't waste verbs, plants himself so his presence says hold. He suggests we look for where kids run. A purse makes small feet inventive. Clues begin to declare themselves once everyone stops trying to remember things they didn't see. At the edge of the green, a scuffle of prints shows two sizes, one large, one the sort that still likes climbing the reeve's coppiced hazel. A string lies sulking near a tent peg, its end frayed like a story interrupted by laughter. Under the ribbon seller's table, a honey cake wrapper, you feel cleared, your own crumbs in full alibi view, sits beside a smear of mint. The eel woman sniffs. "River child," she says, with the certainty of someone who knows where thyme grows and where children rinse sticky fingers. The night watch woman taps the prints with her staff, then points towards the willows. The path there keeps secrets badly. Your boy with the soft cap, the one who taught you to avoid window weather, sidles up, fidgeting with useful guilt. "Saw someone run," he mutters. "Small someone, quick as snipe, had a purse face, wide and surprised." He looks at you like a Confederate, and then at the night watch like a student hoping the lesson is interesting. She nods, makes room in the search for his eagerness, and sends a pair of lads to check behind the puppet booth and the ale casks, while she, you, the baker, and the eel woman tie the rest of the fare back together with words. "No shouting," she tells the crowd. "Keep the stalls open. A fare that panics drops more than one purse." The minstrels, saints bless them, understand. They raise the tune again, something sprightly that says nothing to see here, plenty to hear. And the jugglers put gravity back to work as a decoy. The steward would approve. The bee mustn't know you're after honey. You and your small search party slide off the green like a thought that hasn't decided to become a sentence yet, following the shallow signatures of bare feet and the occasional cat print into a shade that smells of willow sap and stone cool water. At the river bend, the light goes green and polite. The mill stands downstream, its wheel turning the day into flower as if this were not a miracle. Your lucky nail ticks once against your ribs when you step from bank to root. You touch it, and the nail remembers thresholds for you. On a snag of elder, a thread of ribbon flutters. Same color as the draper's pond, you notice with an inward nod to the day's persistent palette. Underneath, a little scuff where someone sat quick and low. You crouch. The baker crouches better, used to reading the bottoms of things. The eel woman wades a foot into the shallows and lifts a coin that blinked once in the sun and gave itself away. Hungry, not wicked, or at least not practiced, she murmurs, which is softer than thief and kinder than fool. Dusk begins collecting itself between the leaves like blue smoke. The night watch woman measures the light with her eyes, the way the bell ringer measures it with sound. She says, "Then we've got a path then. We keep after it before Vespers hands the world to moths." Behind you, the fair hums on, mischief momentarily deprived of an audience. You taste thyme and honey at the back of your mouth, where courage lives. Feel the cool of your bandage and the warmth of nettle tea remembered. Snug the cloak borrowed from the baker, and step onto the route where the small feet went. The river bends its ear to listen. The mill wheel turns to hear. And you, who started the day under thatch and a crooked shutter, find yourself part of a little company, walking a slow problem towards its gentler answer.
The willow path thins to a hush that tastes like evening, and you move the way a moth might, curious but careful, along routes polished by small decisions. Gnats sew shining stitches where the last light lingers. Ahead, the mill keeps its own slow sentence, wheel thudding a comfortable syllable into the river. Hush, turn, hush, turn. Flower breathes from the open door as if grain has learned to dream. The night watch woman raises 2 fingers, and the little company, baker, eel woman, bell ringer, boy in the soft cap, folds itself into quiet. Prints are almost a conversation when you look at them right. Bare toes press crescents into a damp patch where the river elbowed itself earlier. A heel slides, corrects, slides less, the language of haste trying not to be. The eel woman points with a chin practiced in tides. 4 feet, not 2, she murmurs, and you see it. A second set, smaller still, overlapping now and then like a shadow that hasn't grown up yet. The baker tips her head, listening to crumbs the way she listens to dough. Hungry feet, she says, and somehow that is a scent to her, not only a guess. You come to the mill's undercroft, where the wheel's paddles chew water into a friendly grumble. Along the quay, a cat does arithmetic with its tail and concludes you are not fished. The door to the flower room stands ajar, inviting because no one bothers to steal what the whole village survives by. Still, the midwife's lesson taps your shoulder. You touch the lucky nail through your seam, then, remembering another instruction, lay it for a breath on the sill. Introduce yourself, she'd said, and the iron feels the timber, and the place agrees not to be surprised by you. Inside is the pale snowfall world, where sacks lean like tired bishops, and a millstone hums its round song. Dust shifts in the lamplight, deliberate as monks. On a beam, somebody, oh, somebody, has fingered rude eyes and a smile in flour, the mischief of small hands that have not yet learned how serious grain is. The night watchwoman's mouth tilts, not approval, not anger, something like memory, trotting out an old shoe. She points to a bin lid askew, and you all hear it, the sound small people make when they remember breathing options. You raise your palm, borrowing the bell ringer's slow calm, and crouch. Evening, you say, into the flower-scented dark, voice soft as beeswax. Your ribbons caught on the elder, your mint gave you away. If you come out now, the tune we play is kinder. A silence, broken only by the river repeating its one polite opinion. Then a rustle, a scuff, and 2 faces resolve from the chalky shadow like moons stepping out of cloud. A boy narrow as a willow wand, a girl with hair stuck to her forehead in flower commas. The purse sits between them, not opened, clutched with both hands like someone holding a live bird and not sure what birds eat. The eel woman sees first what matters. When you last put kindness in your stomachs, she asks, already pulling a heel from her pouch, because eel women, like rivers, anticipate. The boy's chin goes up in the way children think makes them equal to adults. The girl's eyes keep talking without waiting for permission. "This morning," the boy says. "Yesterday morning," the girl adds, and the truth lands somewhere between their voices. The baker's cheek tightens in the particular way bread people frown at hunger. She breaks the heel and pushes it into small hands with a salting of time so the mouth knows the world is not always plain. The boy holds the purse like fire. "We were only going to borrow," he lies, which is a kind of truth. The string on the green was already half cut. He glances at the night watch woman and then at you, because you are new enough to be the least terrifying and foolish enough to be compassionate. "The man with ribbons has mean eyes." The eel woman snorts softly. "Ribbon men learn their looks from mirrors. You can't trust them for judgment." "Who showed you how to lift the knot?" the night watch woman asks, and the boy's glance stumbles. Out from under the mill stair slides a third figure you did not count, older by 2 bright years and wearing trouble like a feather in his cap. He has the cocky grin of a puppet saint who's gotten loose from the booth. "Dared them," he confesses with a shrug. "Said the town would shout and the fair would sing louder. Told them I'd split the cake." He points to the sticky wrapper you saw under the stall. "I ate fast," he adds, "which would be funny in a different hour." The bell ringer coughs a single iron note. A dare that eats someone else's supper is theft with a hat on. His sentence flat as an anvil. The older boy's grin dims. He's not wicked. He's practiced. The 2 flower children aren't practiced at anything except being smaller than their hunger. You weigh your words like coins. "The steward said to bring the finder." You tell the older boy, "Congratulations, you've found responsibility." The night watch woman's staff touches the floor once in approval, not of the joke, but of the trajectory. She kneels to the smaller 2. "Here's how we mend this with more than shouting. We return the purse while the fare is still itself. We count the coins in front of the man with mean eyes and the woman with good bread. We say what was wrong and what will be right." She looks up at the older boy. "And you will help haul barrels for the ale taster and posts for the puppet saints, and you will walk the night watch with me to learn where mischief's edge lives." The baker adds terms that taste better than they sound. "You 2 eat with me, tonight, and tomorrow, and the day after if the reeve agrees. You carry my firewood and rinse my bowls, and in return you stop trying to trick hunger with other people's strings. If you must dare, dare to ask." The purse twitches between small hands like a captured bird deciding whether to trust the pocket being offered. Then the boy, river-thin, mint-smelling, nods. The girl nods after him, and the eel woman wraps the purse in a scrap of cloth so that temptation stops arguing with skin. On the path back, the light has gone clean and blue, the exact color of your draper's thread. Swallows write sharp inscriptions in the air, and the mill wheel thunks an old lullaby. You notice, because the future likes to rehearse in the corner, a rope on the wheel's axle chafed to a paler stripe, and a snag of weed worrying the paddles. The bell ringer sees you seeing. "Weather wants a word tomorrow," he murmurs. "Best to have our words ready." You store that away the way you store a rushlight, not burning, but prepared. At vespers at last gathers the light and folds it, the fair softens without fading. The bells walk their bronze river through the lanes. Geese decide this was all about them and settle. You taste time again, because courage is habit, not only a moment. The purse was lost and is found. The village holds. The world agrees for one more evening to be mended by hands and not by thunder.
Curfew bell walks the village into hush, and you do as you were taught. Bank the hearth like dough under a cloth, coax a coal the size of a plum to sleep, lay your lucky nail by the bricks so iron and fire learn each other's names. One rushlight burns low for companionship, the other waits for decisions. Rain begins in a litter of small feet on the thatch, then lengthens into steady handwriting across the roof. Sleep tries to make a bargain, lightning revises it. The first crack is white and absolute, a sheet ripped from the sky. The second carries thunder that rolls the hall beams like barrels. Wind climbs the lane and rattles shutters that were sure of themselves an hour ago. A fist finds your door, the night watchwoman's voice threads through the latch. "Up now, Mill!" Her staff knocks once. Not alarm, just punctuation. You shrug your cloak on. Rosemary, smoke, friend. Loop the red thread knots under your sleeve where they won't snag. Tuck the pond-colored thread deep and the salt twist safer, and shoulder into rain with a kind of quiet you didn't know you owned. The green is a puddled map. Candlelit windows look like ships. The bell ringer already stands mid-lane, slick as a rope, rain running off his hair as if the weather respects him just enough to leave him visible. The baker arrives with a shawl like a dark wing and a basket that has decided loaves can travel even in storms. The eel woman appears without announcing, the river's opinion written in her eyes. The smith lopes up at a steady trot, a coil of hemp over one shoulder, a bag of iron temper in his fist. "Wheel sulking in the sluice one clear," the night watchwoman reports, already counting heads. "If the wheel jams, Flower sleeps. If Flower sleeps, morning's belly argues." No one needs more explanation. The mill is the village's second heartbeat. Tonight, it is irregular. The path to the river goes from rain to river and back again. Willows sing a low sheet metal note. Gnats give up their sowing for the night. The mill is a hulking silhouette, its wheel a dark horizon with teeth. Lightning briefly sketches the problem. A limb from the upstream alder has wedged among the paddles, a tangle of weed woven through like villainous knitting. Water piles its argument against the jam, boils white, spills past, bites at the quaystones with intentions. Somewhere inside a lamp stutters, and Flower breathes a pale worry into the air. And there, another hiss, thinner, uglier. The rope you noticed yesterday, chafed to a pale stripe, has given up its pretense and parted where it rounds the axle. The wheel jerks, bites, stops. The miller, face chalked and hatless, shouts an apology to the weather, as if it were a person he has accidentally stepped on. "Introduce yourself," you remind your hand in the rain, and touch your nail to the sill before ducking under the eave. The smith's eye gets there first. "Backlash will splinter the spokes if we bully it," he says loud enough for the thunder to take notes. "We need a backward pull and a clean cut." The bell ringer answers by swinging his coil down. Bell rope, retired from service when it frayed near the muffler, more than enough good hemp left for a job that matters. The eel woman wades with a laugh that has teeth, rope over her shoulder. "We'll wrap her belly low," she says of the wheel. "Make the river do the heavy thinking for once." The reeve arrives hauling willow poles that drip conviction.
He drives 2 into the bank for a dead man so the rope has something to tell its story to. "Hounds and ropes prefer a firm word," he says cheerfully, slamming a stake home. You knot the bell rope's bitter end as you were taught in every other part of the day, courtesy in one hand, counting in the other. "Round thrice in a prayer," the bell ringer says. "On 3, lean like you meant it." The baker plants her boots, loaves forgotten under a tarpaulin that thinks it is a boat. The miller swallows rain and shame in equal lungfuls. The eelwoman yells, "Set!" and you all do. Rope lifts, sings, bites. The wheel answers like a stubborn song learning the next verse. "1," calls the bell ringer, tone pitched like prime, 2 like sextine, 3 like vespers, and on that third the world moves. The limb shifts offended. Weed lets go of some opinions and clings to others. The smith levers just so, weight low, hands sure, and the wheel hitches backwards a half span, enough for water to claw underneath and make the case for motion. "Again," the night watchwoman orders, and you do, lungs ragged at their own surprise. "Once more for saints and supper," the baker mutters, and on that round the limb rolls out as if it suddenly remembered it has somewhere else to be. The eelwoman rides the water like a very practical mermaid and boots the worst of the weed off the paddles with the toe of her boot. The rope hums a lower note, the wheel takes a breath, then another, and decides to live. Inside, because trouble never travels alone, heat where it does not belong has been arguing with flour dust, the mill's worst combination. A wedge of oily rag, wrapped too lovingly around the axle to quiet last week's squeak, has kissed friction. A lick of flame plays fool at the seam where beam meets bearing, very small, very serious. The miller lunges with a bucket and misses the point. You smell what could become story and refuse it. "Smother," you hear the midwife in your head, and the eelwoman already knows. She heaves a wet sacking up from the undercroft, slaps it down like a schoolmaster's palm, starves the flame flat. The smith lays a second, and the fire goes from gossip to apology in a breath. "No breath for fire," he says, as if teaching a child table manners. With the wheel turning like a regret repaired, there remains the matter of the rope that failed. The bell ringer hauls the chafed remnant up, spits rain, and looks at the smith. "Can you give me a dog?" he asks. The smith rummages in his bag and grins. Of course he can. He has a pair of iron dogs already forged, U-shaped with teeth, the sort of thoughtful scrap that lives in a pocket because one never knows when a rope will need reminding of its purpose. He drives one into the sound part of the rope with his hammer's polite persuasion, bites the bitter end with the other, and locks them together with a pin that shines like a star. His touch mark sits on the pin's head, a little star among wet wood and wet faces. "This will hold till tomorrow's sun," he promises. "Tomorrow I give you chain." The miller nods with all the dignity a flour-dusted man in a storm can muster. The sluice now takes its own advice and clears. The eelwoman drags out weed and ropes that smell of pond and persistence. The reeve's stakes hold like good sentences. The bell ringer's knots think well of themselves. The night watchwoman makes a small mark on the ledger she keeps in her head. Storm addressed, fire refused, bread encouraged. The baker rescues her tarpaulin. The basket below it steams like a prophecy. She shoves a heel at you because you are shaking and didn't notice. "Eat before you celebrate how alive you are," she orders. And you do. Rain salting the crumb, time calling courage by its first name. Lightning goes farther off to practice on some other argument. Thunder's shoulders drop. The wheel finds its old lullaby. Hush, turn, hush, turn. The miller puts his forehead briefly to the beam that nearly learned the wrong lesson. It forgives him because wood is better at forgiveness than iron, and iron has done enough forgiveness for one night. You check the red thread's knots. Body, breath, road. Still snug, still warm. You touch the lucky nail through your seam. It's cool, agreeable, convinced you introduced yourself correctly to danger and to help alike. Back up the lane, the bells do not ring. We are not scaring storms by music tonight. But the bell ringer hums a low thing that makes your lungs remember how to settle. The smith straps his bag and smiles like a man who has argued successfully with the elements and would not mind hot broth. The eel woman squeezes water out of her skirt with the philosophical patience of rivers. The night watchwoman's staff knocks once more, dismissal, gratitude, an invitation to sleep. You follow the group back through lanes that shine like ink, thinking how a village is a rope. Many fibers, twisted together, stronger when wet, stronger when pulled as one. By the time you tramp back from the mill, the storm has unstitched itself into friendly drips, and the village looks like it's been polished with moonlight. Curfew would have tucked everyone in, but exceptions bloom where gratitude does. Torches bud along the green, resin bright, feathered with sparks, and the steward, who can look stern even while smiling, pretends not to notice how many doors forget to latch. The baker arrives first, because bread is always early, laying out travel loaves that steam like warm thoughts. The eel woman follows with skewers that sizzle and wink, time popping in little green fireworks. The bell ringer hangs a stub of retired bell rope over the ship box by the church and ties it with a neat knot that looks as if it were invented for tonight. Laughter does a kindness to suspicion. It sends it home early. The ribbon merchant, eyes less mean in torch glow, brings a coil of sky-colored scraps and donates them with ceremony, because public generosity is a marvelous laundress. Jugglers, who have survived rain by sheer stubbornness, shake out their knives and play the moon back into courage. Minstrels find a tune that has mud in its boots and stars on its sleeve. You're folded into a bench between the smith and the reeve. Your cloak drinks smoke and rosemary as if it were born to this exact hour. Trenchers circle, then return lighter. Ale proves once again that it prefers to be a medium for toasts rather than arguments. The steward clears his throat, and the green answers by standing up inside, if not on its feet. Bread baked, wheel turned, fire refused, purse found, he counts, like a man tallying mercies. Neighbors kept their corners. He lifts a cup toward the miller, toward the eel woman still laughing water out of her braids, toward the bell ringer whose knots behaved, toward the smith whose star sits tonight on a certain shining pin. We make no heroes, he adds, only hands. The night watchwoman's staff taps once. It's as close to applause as she allows herself. Oaths here are small on purpose so they can be kept. The tithing men murmured their tens safe. The ale taster swears by his nose and doesn't spill a drop. The baker promises, for the 400th time, that her loaves will continue telling the truth. Then the reeve, with daisies absent but dignity intact, turns to you. Traveler, he says, as if the word were a door held open, you're not ours to command, but we're bold enough to ask a promise from you. He offers it the way he'd offer a knife, handle first. When you come to your next hearth, tap the lintel with that lucky nail and remember tonight's rope. Speak fairly of us to the road. Keep your thread for mending, not for snares. Across the bench, the smith slides you a fresh nail with a star-faced head. One made proper, he grins. Keep the lopsided one for humility. Tokens multiply, but not in a way that makes your pockets scold. The ribbon man applauds this redistribution with exactly the humility required. Even the children who flirted with theft are brought into the circle correctly. The older boy, barrel-sore and learning, bears the steward's nod like a useful weight,
The two smaller are set to butter trenchers. Their hands learn efficiency instead of tricks. The night watch woman leans on her staff and watches them learn the shape of help. We write names in the ledger we keep behind our eyes. It's lighter than ink and harder to lose, she tells you, not unkindly. Songs happen because someone starts them and no one refuses to join. Work songs first, wheel and scythe and hammer, because they still hum in everyone's shoulders. Then a psalm the monks have taught the lanes. Then nonsense rounds that persuade even geese to listen. You taste how a village keeps itself. The savory of pottage, the briny handful the salt cellar shook into your palm this morning, echoing now in stew. The sweet of honey that bandages burns and mends timbers. The bitter edge that weather sometimes brings, softened tonight by firelight and agreements. The miller speaks a small apology to the crowd. Oily rag, poor choice, lesson learned. And the crowd, which prefers good flour to perfect men, forgives him completely. Plans because leaving without them is a kind of rudeness. The reeve scratches a map in ash at your feet. Ridge path here, two elms like old men gossiping, one stile that wobbles, a footbridge the village will mend after St. Lawrence. Take the east gate at first light, he says. The road there stays high when the river changes its mind. The bell ringer promises prime a little brighter as a send-off. The baker will leave your loaf and a corner of cheese on her sill, wrapped for dew. The eel woman offers a smoked morsel, in case courage oversleeps, and the midwife presses a thumb of charcoal into your palm for any water that pretends to be clear when it isn't. The smith will meet you at the stile with an iron brooch, a small star to keep your cloak from arguing with the wind. Payment, you protest, and he snorts. We settled that when you pumped the bellows honest. The steward, grave even in grace, raises a final cup. Go in our hearing, he says, which is not a thing your own century says, and you love it instantly. When you are far, let the sound of your steps mean us well. Around you, torches tilt like tall flowers. Faces, baker, eel woman, bell ringer, midwife, smith, reeve, the abbey's quiet, turn into a small constellation you could navigate by. You feel the lucky nail through your seam, the bell-rope coil in your pocket, the red thread on your wrist humming its 3 calm notes. As the night thins toward rest, benches are cleared, embers coaxed into safe silence, and the village returns to its separate roofs the way a flock returns to perches, individually and together. The night watch woman walks you to your door and gives the lintel a professional look as if it might attempt mischief in your absence. Dawn, she says without question marks. You promise. The rushlight for companionship sighs low. The one for decisions remains unlit. In the hush that follows, you can hear the mill wheel far off. Hush, turn. Hush, turn. And the day after this one already rearranging its pockets to make room for your leaving.
Dawn takes the long way in, soft-footed over thatch and hedge, and you wake into it before the bell decides to make anything official. Your rushlight is a thin memory. Your hearth keeps its plum-sized ember like a quiet promise. You do what you promised the reeve you would. You lift your lucky nail, tap the lintel once, and feel the grain answer, house to hand, hand to road. The red thread sits steady on your wrist, body, breath, road. And the small seed charm the midwife added feels like a yes you can carry. Cloak over shoulders, pond-colored thread tucked where it won't snag, parchment slip from the abbey folded into your pouch, a thumb of charcoal for suspect water, the coil of retired bell rope in your pocket with the knot that remembers the hours. You open the door to a morning that smells freshly laundered. On the sill, wrapped against dew just as promised, waits the baker's traveler's loaf with its corner of cheese. A sprig of thyme rides the wrapping like a green signature. The baker herself appears from nowhere, as bakers do, a warm hand on your forearm and a grin that pretends this is simply an errand. "Tear small," she murmurs, repeating the first lesson you learned in her doorway, and tucks one more heel in your pouch when you're not looking. Your bandaged fingertips, garlic and honey still faint in their memory, thank her with a flex that no longer stings. At the green, prime sounds brighter, as offered, each stroke a braid of leave-taking. The bell ringer stands near the ship box and gives you a nod that says you now know how days work, even if the world you came from wears its time differently. He taps the old bell rope coil in your pocket with 2 fingers, a benediction disguised as a check. "Keep hours by kindness," he says, "bells or no bells." You answer with the little courtesy palm you learned in the market, and you both pretend not to notice the sting in your throat. The eel woman meets you where the lane first guesses it might become road. A sliver of smoked fish wrapped like treasure. "For courage when the path decides it's taller than you," she says, and ties a new twist of time to your cloak's tie. She looks toward the river and then back to you with the same fondness. "Introduce yourself to every water," she adds, grinning, "and don't let Mint make a liar of you." The smith is waiting at the stile like a punctuation mark, star-headed brooch in his palm catching the early light. He fastens your cloak as if it were a hinge, and you were a door he means to hang true. "This star will argue with wind on your behalf," he says. "If it loses, bring it back and I'll teach it better manners." He pretends the sky is dull, so none of you have to say this is a goodbye. You touch the bucket-made chorus of nails you once added your clumsy note to, and think, not for the first time, how iron remembers pathways. The reeve walks you as far as the 2 elms that gossip over the ridge. He draws a last map in the dust with his hazel, the same calm lines he scratched in ash last night. "There's a wobble in the stile after," he warns. "Argue with it politely." He lifts his hat, not a daisy in sight, and squares it like a man finishing a tidy column of figures. If you meet a boundary and don't know who it belongs to, ask the shadow at noon. A practical blessing, and somehow tender. The midwife steps from the hedgerow as if she were always part of it, checks your 3 knots, and taps each with a fingertip scented of lemon balm. "Body, breath, road," she repeats, as if the dawn needs reminding. Then she presses a little jar of honey into your hand, for stings of any kind, and by her tone you know she means the ones that wear boots and speak also. She leans to kiss your temple like a mother of villages and slips away before you can embarrass either of you by thanking her too many times. By the east gate, the monk from the abbey stands with the quiet of limestone in his bones. He offers no sermon, only his palm, and you give yours. The parchment slip in your pouch feels suddenly heavy with usefulness. "Rule before you ruin," he whispers with a smile that makes the rule feel like freedom. He sketches a blessing small enough to fit under a hat and waves you outward with fingers stained the blue you ground. The night watch woman appears last, staff tucked in the crook of her arm as if off-duty were a hat she hasn't put down yet. She considers you the way she considers dark corners, professionally, with affection. "Walk where you can be seen," she advises. "When you can't, walk like you belong anyway." She taps the stile with the end of her staff, listens to its wobble, and gives it the look that made dice behave at the fair. The stile does its best. Behind you, the small ones, ribbon round a loaf, flower commas in hair tidy at last, Wave with both arms, which is the correct number of arms for a farewell. The older boy, barrel sore and better for it, raises a hand with the shy bravado of someone learning where mischief's edge lives. The ribbon man, properly laundered by generosity, gives an awkward bow. Even the geese participate by pretending the moment is entirely about them.
You cross the stile, and the village lowers into a bowl of morning, roofs salted with light, the mill wheel turning hush, turn, hush, turn, like a distant breath. The path takes your boots in and keeps them, step after step, through rye that rubs shoulders with the sky, past the coppice where hazel rehearses usefulness, over the footbridge the steward promised to mend. The smith's star head pins glint where the rails already remember courage. You pause at the crest by the two elms, and the whole dear geometry of fields, strips, commons, and the green opens like a book laid flat. You could read it now without help. The Reeves ledger written in furrow and fallow, the baker's truth cooling on sills, the abbey's calendar breathing in windows, the market's grammar, the manor's rope of hazel, the eel woman's silver punctuation where the river curves, the bell's bronze handwriting across hours. Your hand finds the brooch star, and then the nail under your seam. You think, all at once and very gently, that when you wake next in your own bed with your own hum of machines pretending to be bells, you will still tear small, still keep water honest, still mark your work with a touch that means you'll mend it if it fails, still carry thyme for courage, still speak fairly of strangers and rope your day with good knots. You will, as the bell ringer said, keep hours by kindness. The road joins you. It doesn't ask questions. It rarely does. But it listens while you retell the day to yourself in one long exhale. And as you walk down the far side of the ridge, you feel the peculiar, wonderful sensation of past and future walking one on each side, easy as friends. You don't look back again. You don't have to. The village has taught you how to carry it where your pockets can't reach. The wand down. Let your shoulders drop now, as if the cloak you wear has learned to be lighter, as if the little star at your throat is only a warm button, and the road in front of you is level and sure. Breathe in through your nose, slow and calm, and notice how the morning has turned into a soft ribbon that you can wrap once around your wrist with the red thread. Breathe out through your mouth, longer, and hear the mill far away keep its hush, turn, like a mother's hand on your back. Each step becomes smaller, then smaller still, until you are not really walking so much as floating, the way thistledown floats when it understands the field will catch it. You may still taste thyme, that gentle courage, and you might feel the weight of a lucky nail that no longer needs to guard your skin because the road is friendly and the sky is invested in you getting home. Let the bells fade, first to a memory, then to a suggestion, and keep only the shape of them, round and kind, tucked somewhere behind your eyes where good sounds rest. If thoughts arrive like stray geese, let them settle on the pond and fall asleep with their heads under their wings. If worries try to replay the storm, remind them that the rope held, the wheel turned, and fire learned its manners. There is a bed now, familiar and wide, somewhere just ahead of you. You can see the fold of the sheet like a white lane, the pillow like a green at dusk. When you reach for it, do so slowly, like lifting the cover of a book you love. Lay down the coil of rope, the thread, the parchment slip, the little jar of honey. Give the star a last small touch, and feel how all those gifts become light enough to rest beside you without needing your hands. Your breathing lengthens, thoughts space out like cottages at the edge of a village, warm windows closing one by one. The night watch woman taps her staff once, somewhere very far away, only to say that everything is well. The bells do not need to ring. The story can finish with you safe and drowsy, the day folded, the road quiet, sleep arriving like a gentle friend who doesn't need to be announced. End of story. Sweet dreams.